Welcome to Close Listening. I'm Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B. So a band called the Zombies were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a few years ago. It was 2019. And since then, I've been curious about their music. I've heard their song Time of the Season on the radio a few times, I think back when we had Sirius XM, but I didn't have a sense if the band had much of a profile in rock history beyond that one pretty cool song. And the fascinating thing is my initial sense was kind of right, but only kind of. You see, there are some rock artists who do get to be quite famous, who do make it even to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on the basis of only a few songs, a few stellar recordings. But they tend to be performers from the 50s, like Eddie Cochran or Ritchie Valens. And that's because the 50s was the founding generation of rock and roll. So its performers have a kind of mysticism to them. You know, Little Richard's career might have started and then disappeared pretty quickly, but the amount of influence he had in that tiny amount of time, it's unreal. You can't tell the story of rock and roll without telling the names of a lot of these short-lived superstars. But when you talk about musicians who come after that early period, the standard for certainly getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame tends to be higher. That's why musicians from later who have those kind of short-lived careers, we view them as one-hit wonders, not icons. So what is the deal with the Zombies? Was there more to them than Time of the Season? Well, it seems their story is that beyond a couple of early hits, they never quite made it. You know, they struggled to stand out in the crowded 1960s British band scene. They had their biggest hit, Time of the Season, after they broke up. And the album that was on, Odyssey of Oracle, came to be more appreciated as a 60s classic with time. Since that initial breakup, however, the Zombies have come together for a number of reunion albums. New World, albeit without their important keyboardist Rod Argent, came out in 1991. R.I.P., an unreleased album from the 60s, was finally released in 2000. As Far as I Can See came out in 2004. Breathe In and Breathe Out in 2011. And finally, Still Got That Hunger, which was paid for on a crowdfunding site, came out in 2015. Granted, these records did not include all the same personnel as the original releases. However, lead singer Colin Blunstone was on all of them. Songwriter and keyboardist Rod Argent, who's sort of the central figure, he was on all of them except that 1991 record. And the other founding members, Chris White, Hugh Grundy, and Paul Atkinson, have maintained their relationship with the band and contributed in various capacities, though Atkinson died in 2004. But in short, the Zombies' nostalgia comeback records came to outnumber the records from their so-called glory days. So this puts them in this unique historical position where on the one hand, for a little bit, they were the peers of the Beatles. They even borrowed John Lennon's Mellotron from the Sgt. Pepper sessions. But in order to have a lasting legacy, in order to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the reason why people are listening to their records today is because of what happened after the Beatles, that years later, they struggled to come together, that they've maintained that relationship as a band and kept working long past their supposed period of relevance. And that every man, three chords in the truth kind of spirit, that about the Zombies is what's truly rock and roll. So I ended up getting a copy of the Zombies' first record. And unfortunately, many would say this is not the true first record because like a lot of British bands back then, for some reason, there had to be a different British edition and American edition of the record. The British cover design is slightly more visually appealing, slightly more fits the idea of a zombie. It's called Begin Here. This one is just called The Zombies, featuring She's Not There and Tell Her No, the two early hits. That said, the content is fairly similar to what's on Begin Here. So prior to Time of the Season, the Zombies' big hit was a song called She's Not There. So like a lot of British music at the time, this was inspired by the blues, specifically a line from a John Lee Hooker song. And content-wise, it's pretty simple subject matter. It's just a song about being broken up with. But it could be heard because of its weird wording of she's not there as a lot weirder. You know, it's a song that's as weird as the listener wants it to be. I learned that when the band picked the name of their group, they weren't really familiar with zombies. And there have been zombie movies as long as there have been cinema, but I guess before the George Romero movies, there might not have been as much of a popular universal understanding of the concept of the zombie. So I think on the one hand, the band sort of thought of themselves as a weird and creepy group because they had this name, but not really, because again, look at this boring cover photo. This is not a band that is yet trying to lean into the idea of we're the zombies, we make weird, spooky music on our keyboards. Track number 2 is a cover of the George Gershwin standard Summertime. Rod Argent, again, is the central figure in putting a lot of this music together. And I have the sense that he was a pretty talented piano player. So the idea that they simply played catchy rock of the day is not what he was there for. He was there for doing experimental things with his keyboard and playing some of the standards. Track number 3 is called It's All Right With Me. This is another original song, and it's kind of blues type lyrics, but again, tinged with a little bit of experimentalism here and there. You've got some tempo changes, some light vocal harmonizing. So what looks like blues on a piece of paper really does not sound like blues when you listen to it. Track number 4 is a medley of a Smokey Robinson and the Miracles song. You've Really Got a Hold on Me, that in a really cool way in the end changes to Sam Cooke's Bring It On Home to Me. It's just a nice mashup. I like the way they do it. Track number 5, another Rod Argent song, Sometimes. This is it's an interesting dialogue or harmony between major and minor vocal. And it turns the concept of love into a more sensory psychedelic experience by matching an organ hit with the lyric Touch You. Track number 6 is called Woman. It's another original song, and it sounds like something the Animals might record. So, pretty standard British invasion rock and roll. Track number 7 is called Tell Her No. The verses kind of sound like French cafe jazz, but then the chorus with all its no, no, no sounds a lot poppier. Track number 8 is a Zombies original, but it's not written by Rod Argent. It's written by the other guy who seemed to do a bunch of songwriting for the band, the bass player, Chris White. This one is the brightest, poppiest feel of anything that is on the record. It opens with a nice Birds-like guitar riff, and then it manages to bring in some psychedelic solos and haunting backup vocals, because I guess, once again, this is a team effort, and Rod Argent is not happy to just do straight pop, but it does sound comparatively bright and uplifting compared to the other things that are on here. Track number 9 is called Work and Play. It's a harmonica jam credited to producer Ken Jones. I wonder if the producer is even playing the harmonica, because when I was looking at the personnel for the band, it didn't say which one of them played the harmonica, but I'm only speculating here. Track number 10 is by a guy named Philip Mitchell. It's called Can't Nobody Love You. Kind of sounds like something that Etta James would sing. Track number 11 is another Chris White composition. It's called What More Than Can I Do? There's some great psychedelic keyboard work from Rod Argent. And again, it's one where it can be as weird as you want it to be, again, because of that psychedelic keyboard sound. And also you could possibly infer something a little creepy from the lyric. I'd gladly lose myself to you, but something always holds me back. I wish I knew what it is that stops me from loving you the way it should be. Obviously, pretty innocuous lyrics, but if you want to hear something holding you back in there, you totally can. And track number 12 is a song by a guy called Preston Foster. It's just an upbeat kind of blues song. It's called Got My Mojo Working, and you could, again, imagine a group like the Animals recording. So the Zombies' original career was short, and I guess I'll have to listen to Odyssey Oracle sometime soon. Do they have another song that's quite as iconic as Time of the Season? I don't think so. Let me know what you think of the Zombies in the comments below. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.